Welcome to episode 30 of the Educational Duct Tape Podcast. This is the 7th episode of Season 2, and I'll be joined by David Ternent. We'll chat about 3D modeling, prototyping, virtual reality, and augmented reality with tools like Tinkercad, Unity, Onshape, Google Expeditions, and many more. Let's dig in.
I'm Amber Harper from the Burned In Teacher Podcast and a part of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you're listening to now. Shows on the network are individually owned and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Welcome to the Educational Duct Tape Podcast with Jake Miller.
Welcome in, Duct Tapers. Welcome to episode 30 of the Educational Duct Tape Podcast. I'm excited to have you with me today, and I'm also excited to have my real-life friend and former coworker, David Ternent, on the show today. I think you'll really enjoy our chat. It's going to be a little different from our normal subject matter, as we're talking about some pretty technical stuff, but I always say that in my use of the famous Dr. Maya Angelou quote, one element of the knowing better part is being aware of the technology tools that are out there. It doesn't mean you have to use them, it just means you put them into your toolbox as something that you have some general knowledge of, and then maybe when the time comes that you need it for something in the classroom, then you could tap back into that knowledge that you gained from listening to Dave talk about it today. Before we get to all of that, though, I'd like to review our format for Season 2 of the podcast. Episodes come out every other Wednesday morning, and on the other Wednesdays, we have the hashtag #EduDuctTape Twitter chat. Chat number 5 was last week, and it was so fun. I'll include a link to some of the highlights in the show notes. You should check it out. These chats proved my hunch that the audience of this show had their own awesome answers to the questions that my guest and I discuss on the show. So next Wednesday, November 6th, wait, November? That can't be right. Is that true? Hey, Google, what day is next Wednesday?
The 6th of November 2019 falls on a Wednesday.
What? It really is about to be November. That's craziness. By the way, did I trigger any Google Homes with that? I bet I did. Maybe in the future I should say, hey, Soapbox, and ask him these questions. If you participate in any of the Twitter chats, you know he's a pretty smart dude. Anyhow, where was I? Oh yeah, on November 6th at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we'll chat about 5 questions from today's episode. The first will be from the game that I play with Dave today. The second will be from the Soapbox moment today. The third and fourth questions will be the 2 questions that Dave and I discuss in this very episode. And then the fifth is just a bonus question. The participants' chance to share anything else relating to the episode. And Dave and I cover a lot of ground today, so there will be plenty to mention there. Anyhow, I hope you'll join us for the chat. I've also linked into the show notes a Google Calendar that'll show you all of the upcoming chat dates and episode release dates. You can click on it and add it to your calendar so you don't forget about any of those chats. If you've never done a Twitter chat, my recommendation is to go to the show notes, open up the curated collection of tweets from last week's chat, and read through it. It'll give you a feel of how the chats work. There's also a link in there to an ebook about how to use, it's, I think, the Educator's Guide to Twitter, and it's got a couple pages in there about Twitter chats, so you can read that too. But I do feel like if you just read through the curated list of tweets, you're going to go like, I see how this works. Now I see how I get it. I get it. I see how it works. A reminder, by the way, that you can listen without chatting. You don't have to participate in the chat. You can also chat without listening. It'll be weird because you're listening now, but it's possible for you to just do the chat as well. Don't feel like you have to do them both, and don't feel like you have to do them in order. You can always respond to the chat questions later. That's totally fine too. Speaking of responding to the questions, for the non-Twitter people out there, we also discussed the questions in the Duct Tapers Facebook group. That's right, the Duct Tapers Facebook group. We've already got about 300 Duct Tapers in there, and I hope that you'll join too. That is, if you like to use Facebook for educational stuff, or if maybe you don't, and then you don't have to. It's okay. We take you however you want to connect with us is totally fine. But the chat questions also pop up in there, and some fun discussions take place there too. Join us. There are some rewards for you if you do. Every multiple of 200 that the membership count hits, so at 200 members, at 400 members, 600 members, and so on, I give away 1 registration in an upcoming GIF a Day cohort and 1 GIF or GIF sticker. We've already passed 200, but if you get in before we hit 400, you'll have a shot to win then, again when we hit 600, again when we hit 800, and so on. But the real prize, hopefully, will be the connections and the discussions that take place through that group. That Facebook group brings me to a set of thank yous that I need to share. There wouldn't be a Facebook group or a post with the best tweets from the chat if it weren't for a group of duct tapers that are pitching in to help me out. They are the Mighty Ducts. And thank you, Mighty Ducks. Thank you to Sarah Kiefer, Alex Orris, Amy Huckabee, Angela Green with an E on the end, Benjamin Voss, Brandy New, Dan Stitzel, David Allen, Jennifer Conti, Joshua Huff, Kimberly Wren, Lisa Marie Bennett, Matt Meyer, Melinda Vandevort, Melissa Van Heck, Molly Clodor, Nancy Green, also with an E on the end, and Pam Inabinet. Pam, I'm struggling. Pam, I'm trying my hardest. Pam Inabinet. I think I'm getting it right, Pam. Let me know. Anyhow, thank you to the Mighty Ducts for all of your help. I really do appreciate it. Before I step up on the soapbox, let's check in on my calendar. Next week, I'll be keynoting the My Google Conference in Michigan, as well as speaking at the Teach Better Conference in Cuyahoga Falls, Ohio. At that one, by the way, I'm going to do a few live recordings of the show. If you're at the conference, make plans to join me. I'll tweet out the times that I plan to record at. Later in November, I'll be doing a mini keynote at the WVIZ IdeaStream Technology and Learning Conference in Cleveland and doing the first of 2 full-day workshops based off of educational duct tape at Kent State University. The first is on November 22nd, and the second is into December on December 6th. I hope to see some duct tapers there. Details on what will be covered at each of those 2 workshop days are linked into the show notes. That's it for 2019, unless, of course, some of you send me an email to come to your school. In 2020, I've got a handful of things that are in the works, but the only one that's been announced thus far is me doing the keynote for WITCON. That's Whatever It Takes Conference in Galesburg, Illinois in June. Please reach out if you'd like to have me at your school or your conference. So that's where you could see and hear me in person, but what if you'd rather not be in the same room as me, but don't get quite enough of me on this podcast? It's a weird predicament you're in. You're like, I don't want to be around Jake physically, like I don't want him to be in the same room as me, but this podcast just isn't giving me enough of his voice. I need some kind of solution. Well, you were in luck, my friend. Actually, if you don't want me in the same room as me, I'm not sure if we're really friends, but regardless, you're in luck because I was on episode 101 of the Planning Period podcast with Brad Schreffler. Brad's got a great show, so I hope that you'll check out our chat. My favorite part of the appearance wasn't the chat, actually, it was Brad's description of the Educational Duct Tape podcast. He first said that this show is the most bonkers thing he's ever listened to that is also super informative. I think that's pretty accurate, Brad. And he followed that up with, this is basically like if Pee Wee Herman did his own education podcast, is what this sounds like sometimes. Yeah. That's not the first Pee Wee Herman connection. I've had some people tell me that they feel like there should be like a mail time and like everybody starts yelling or like a word of the day. Should I be concerned that people are reminded of Pee Wee Herman when they listen to my podcast? Maybe I should be concerned. Pee-wee's Big Adventure was my favorite movie as a kid for quite a while there. The whole Large Marge thing, I really got a kick out of that movie. It was a good one. Anyhow, also in the show notes is a link to sign up for my newsletter. Subscribing guarantees that you see new EDU gifts before they hit Twitter. I always send them to the newsletter group first. By the way, if you feel like you're signed up but haven't seen any emails from me, you may want to check your spam or promotions folders because I've sent one out almost every week for the last couple months. So I hope I'm not getting caught in there. I'm not spam. At least I don't think I'm spam. Am I spam? Guys, you would tell me if I was spam, right? You wouldn't? That's concerning. Oh, sorry. Hold on. Let me just grab my soapbox from over here. Yeah. There we go. That's perfect. Climb up on there. A few weeks ago, I went into our local hardware store. Since it was my first time in this store, I was surprised to see how big it was, but it wasn't overwhelming for me. It could have been, since I'm not the handiest guy around, but it wasn't. Why not? Because I knew what I was there for. I had a flower bed that was overgrown with weeds, and I wanted to cut it down and start over again with it. All that I needed that day was some landscaping fabric to put underneath the new layer of mulch. I easily found the appropriate aisle. It took me a few minutes to select the correct grade of fabric and the correct roll dimensions, but that was easy. It was easy because I knew what I was there for. And when I had to make decisions, the 150-foot roll or the 50-foot roll, I had information, the size of the flower bed, to go on. I'm not overwhelmed by a large hardware store when I know exactly what I'm there for. When we start with our goal in mind, these situations are not overwhelming. And the same could be true for educational technology. It reminds me of a quote that I shared a few episodes ago. When you go to the hardware store to buy a new drill bit, you don't really want a drill bit. You want a hole. That quote appears to have come from Dr. Ralph Granger from the University of Maine at Farmington. That quote has lots of implications to me. First off, the obvious one that I was talking about here, it's not overwhelming to select a tool when you've identified the job first. 3/8 inch hole, 3/8 inch drill bit. Go to the drill bits aisle. Secondly, we're not actually looking for tools. We're just trying to solve problems. That's educational duct tape right there. Our goals are focused on student learning, not tool selecting. We're not focused on the drill bit. We're focused on the hole. And once you know that you need a hole and you know the size of the hole that you need, then you go to the hardware store, or for some of us, our toolbox. That hardware store represents different things for all of us as educators. It might represent the Google search that you do when you need a formative assessment tool or a text-to-speech tool. It might represent YouTube, where you go to learn how to use that tool. Okay, I need a hole, so I need a 3/8 inch drill bit. Now I need to know how to use my drill. That's important to note. You likely knew that it's a drill that you need to make that hole, but you might not know how to use that drill. And that's okay, because thanks to the internet, we have plenty of just-in-time learning at our fingertips. If, when Dave shares about Onshape in today's episode, you decide that you need Onshape in your class, then you can go watch a YouTube video on how it works. For others of us, we might turn to Twitter or to our PLN, Professional Learning Network, to find out what we need. You tweet, I need to make a 3/8 inch diameter hole in my wall. And other educators will respond, you need to get a 3/8 inch drill bit. And if you need it, some of them will recommend types of bits, hardware stores to visit, what kind of drill you could purchase, and if necessary, some of them will even provide you with tutorials for using that drill. When you identify the goal, the problem, or the learning standard first, it's easy to identify the tool. And if you need help, it's easy to find it because you know what you're asking for. Now, this show represents this situation flipped on its head for some of you. Imagine if you needed that 3/8 inch hole but had no idea what to use to make that hole. A hammer? A saw? Duct tape? You might not have a drill bit or know which drill bit you need, but you have the knowledge that a drill is the tool that makes holes. And that's part of what you get from this show. It's also part of what you get from when you participate in a Twitter chat or browse through Twitter or browse through Teachers of Instagram posts or an EdTech blog, or even when you go to an EdTech conference or a professional learning day at your school district. You get exposure to the tools. You learn what's in the hardware store and what those tools do so that when you have a problem or goal, you know what tool to look for. Twitter, this podcast, and other EdTech information sources are like browsing the hardware store. You're just being exposed to what's out there. You're not trying to learn to use it all. You don't have enough time. It'd be overwhelming, and you don't need it all. You're just becoming aware of what tools you could use. Because if you've never heard of a drill bit, you'll have a hard time figuring out where to start when you need that hole. So as we browse the metaphorical hardware store today, you're going to hear about 3D modeling, virtual reality, and augmented reality apps, sites, software, and tools. You definitely won't use them all, and you might not even use any of them, at least not now, but you're just browsing the hardware store right now. You don't have to use all of the tools. You're just becoming informed.
Today's guest.
All right, today our guest is my buddy David Ternent. Dave is a 7th grade STEM teacher in the Stowe Monroe Falls City School District. He has taught various science classes at the middle school and high school. He was selected to participate in NASA's Space Academy for Educators. He has been awarded grants from the GAR Foundation for 3D printing and VR. Most recently, he was selected to participate in the Fulbright Japan ICT Teacher Exchange in Hawaii. You can reach out to Dave with questions because I bet you're going to end up with some about the exciting stuff he shares today at st_Ternent, which is TERNENT_1 at smfcsd.org, or on Twitter at Dave_Ternent. And again, those will be in the show notes. And I'm excited to have Dave here today because Dave and I taught together for years. How's it going, Dave?
I'm doing well. Jake, how are you?
I'm doing good. This is like old times. This is like us meeting in the little office hallway between our classrooms years ago.
Yep, or me barging in on your class, trying to show you like some huge thing that I just found out.
Yes, that's totally classic. Like I would be coming into your room to share something I just discovered about a Google spreadsheet, and you would be coming into my room to share something you just discovered about 3D modeling or virtual reality or something like that, right?
Definitely. Yep. And then you would roll your eyes at my little 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 invention or whatever.
Right. Dave, I'm teaching
And I would roll
you.
your eyes at your spreadsheet.
Right. I'm teaching right now. Leave me alone.
Yeah.
So Dave and I, for the listeners out there that aren't privy to this male bonding experience that they're witnessing right here, Dave and I worked at the same middle school for years, where Dave is still at, and we taught. 1 year, I was the math teacher, and he was the science teacher on an 8th grade team. And then the two of us had the privilege of co-writing and creating a curriculum for the STEM program that's now at that school. And Dave taught the 7th grade, and I taught the 8th grade. It was a quarterly class. Each student in the school took it for 1 quarter of the school year, getting introduced to a whole lot of different STEM stuff. How much did you keep from the original curriculum, Dave, now 7 or 8 years later?
I can tell you that there is none of it that I have kept. I think every quarter I change something up, and then every other quarter probably something monumental.
Right. And that's totally true from when I was in the program too. So I was teaching it for 3 years, and so that was whatever 12 quarters of teaching it, and we painstakingly planned out those classes before we started the first year, mostly because of my type A personality, not as much because of Dave. Right.
Pretty much, yeah. That's a nice way to put it. That's a lot better way than I would have.
So we put tons of work into planning it, and then literally every quarter we'd go like, you know what, that didn't work, and I'm really excited about this other thing. Let's put this in, and we're like, yeah, I agree. And then next quarter we're like, yeah, that was a fun addition, but let's try this out now. And but I think the kids always benefited from it, don't you?
I think so, yeah. And I think that probably the most important thing, that whenever we first did our class, we had the goal that we wanted to represent the workplace that the kids would be in,
right,
not that the workplace that was around now. So we wanted to introduce them to forward-thinking technology, so that whenever they got to their workplace or their college classes or whatever, they could say, oh, I've seen something like this before.
Yeah. The goal really was to kind of expose them to those things, to see what things they kind of latched onto, what interests they had. I remember having a lot of conversations with middle schoolers who were like, I really don't like this stuff we're doing this week or whatever in this project. And I would be like, well, that's fine. That's what you're trying to find out, is what you're interested in and what you're not, kind of stretch your brain to try out different things.
Right. And then, too, the other big change that I've done in my class is now the students, I have a choice of about 6 or 7 projects, and they choose the project that they're going to do the whole time. Mm-hmm. So switch that up, make it more of because like you said, oh, I hate this part or I hate that part. Try to introduce them to parts of that in their project and try to slip it in on the down low, I guess.
Yeah.
That's a terrible word.
Down low. Sneaky. We'll call it sneaky.
Yeah, there we go. Sneaky.
So yeah, we were totally like modeling. I talk a lot on the show about the Dr. Maya Angelou quote, do the best you can until you know better. And then when you know better, do better. Like we planned the best STEM course we possibly could have planned that very first year, which was now like 8 years ago. And then as we learned new things about what the kids needed to be introduced to, or our views on what, like you're saying, like giving students more choice. Like at first we really didn't. And then as we became aware of those things and became, we changed our philosophies, we changed the courses, and you've continued to do that.
Yeah, correct. And I think too, also changed up how we teach. Mm-hmm. I know it was for me, it was within the first 30 seconds of teaching how to do SketchUp,
right,
that we realized, I can't be up here telling everybody, okay, take your mouse and do this and do that.
Right.
We had to start using YouTube and tutorials to teach in a completely different way.
Yeah. And so shout out now, at this time is the appropriate time to give a shout out to Becky Stanek, who is the new Jake for you, right?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. Yep. Was she an upgrade when I left Stowe and she moved into my role?
Well, I would say a downgrade, but only picking on her height, because she's quite a bit shorter.
Right.
No, she's definitely an upgrade. She is amazing. Yes, she's very, very good.
You're about the only person who, in terms of height, I'm not a downgrade from, right? Because the two of us, we were like the trees of the STEM department.
I know. They joke that there was a height limit.
Right. And then came Becky.
And then came Becky, yeah. Yeah, but it was very interesting seeing Becky first come into the class, and she literally had a deer in the headlight look in her eyes whenever she realized how this class is run, and how you have to teach STEM, and just how she's changed, and just the amazing projects that she's come up with. So yeah, definite shout out.
Yeah, a rock star. So before we move on with the show, tell us about the Fulbright program that you were part of.
Oh, it was amazing. So I entered it thinking, they'll probably never pick me, but this ought to be fun. So I filled out the application, and I was one of 15 American teachers chosen. They flew me out to Hawaii, all expenses paid, and put us up in a nice hotel. There were 15 Japanese teachers, and the ICT stands for Information, Communication, and Technology. And the emphasis was on space, living and working in space. So we are developing projects that we're working with the Japanese teachers to complete during the year. So for my group, the Japanese students over there are coming up with, since they're learning how to speak English, they're talking about, I want this or I don't want that in my space habitat. And then they send what they want to us. My students who are doing SketchUp, they are designing space habitats in 3D, 3D CAD. And so they make the model of the house, and then we'll send our structures to a class in Boston and Philadelphia, and they will design the interior. One class is high school, and they'll be using Revit, and then another class is a bunch of sixth graders, and they will be using a program called Floor Planner.
Wow.
So they'll be putting the interior in the house.
So this is a program, this project that you're doing, the full ICT program is even bigger than that, but the
right.
project that you're a part of is 3 different American schools and 1 school in Japan?
2 schools in Japan. Yeah, 2 schools in Japan. Yep. I think there were 3 or 4 groups of us. Mm-hmm. And the other Japanese classroom is doing they're a high school biology class, and they're looking at the exoplanet app from NASA and coming up with looking at exoplanets that we could go to and what would it look like on there. So they're also, life in this kind of planetary condition would kind of look like this, maybe, if we base it off of life here on Earth.
Man, crazy. That's some cool stuff. So
it's really fun.
This is a total, this is a peek into what it was like when Dave and I would come in each other's classrooms years ago, because this is the kind of stuff you'd be saying to me, and I'd be like, what? And then I would be coming in, check out this spreadsheet formula, and you'd be like, your what was a little different from mine.
Yeah, it might have been, yes.
It was a perfect odd couple situation between the two of us. Good times,
but
Dave.
Then I would feel very good time. And then I would go over to his classroom how do you add 2 cells together again? Right. And he goes,
and I'd be like, now you see, now you know. All right, well, we're already having enough fun, but just to make sure we're having a good quality fun, we're going to play a quick game now. You ready for a game, Dave?
I'm ready for a game.
Which of these things do you consider to be less torturous?
So we're going to play a game of, I wish I could use the easier, clearer, less confusing version of this name for this game, but copyright infringement keeps me from doing that. I've had some lawyers call me up about this. So this game is called Which of the Following is Less Torturous? And I'm going to give you 2 statements, and you're going to tell me which of the following you would consider to be less torturous. You up for that?
I guess so.
Okay, he's up for it, guys. He's in. He's in. Here we go. Okay, the first one, I always go silly with the first one. Which of the following would be less torturous? Having to wear, I can't believe I'm asking this on a podcast. Having to wear someone else's underwear or having to use someone else's toothbrush?
Oof. Oh, man.
People are turning off their phone. I can't listen to this. This guy is so immature. Why is he asking this question? I'm just done with this podcast. But you still have to answer.
All right. This is going to be bad. I got to tell you, I've actually done the second one.
Okay, good. As long as it's not the first one.
Yeah, right? Goodness gracious. So I guess the second one I'll go with. But I did boil the toothbrush before I used it.
You boiled it. That's the way to do it. Yep.
When you're out in the woods, that's what has to happen.
That's that is the science teacher's way of handling that problem. I have to use your toothbrush, but I am going to boil it first.
Yep, exactly. We're going to kill anything on there for both of our sakes.
Is how sad is it that even if the underwear were clean, even if they were clean, neither of us would entertain that idea?
Yeah, that's no bueno.
No boy, no. Like literally, like the water in the washing machine, like, it's not boiling, but it's just about as hot. Like it's got to kill any germs. But we're like, nope, there's no way.
Nope.
We're not sharing underwear with anybody.
That's
It doesn't have to be my underwear, Dave. It could be anybody's underwear, but you're still saying no, right?
That's a Texas-sized hard no.
Hard no. Okay, next one's a little less awkward to answer. Which of the following would be less torturous? Having an embarrassing message pop up on your computer screen during a presentation to your colleagues, or during a presentation to your class, your students?
Actually, I've had the first one happen, but in a presentation, like to grant people.
Oh gosh. Okay.
So,
had you already been awarded the grant?
Yeah, I'd already been awarded the grant and was talking about like how much fun we're having with the grant, and it's so,
and then like a text message pops up on your screen that says like, "Hey, do you still hate your job?"
Yeah. No, it was like an email notification, and it was for like not baldness, but for something.
Other types of prescriptions.
Yeah, other types of prescription medications.
That's great.
So,
oh gosh,
always block the notifications.
Yes, yeah. Whenever somebody does that in a presentation, I'm like, seriously, dude. So, which one are you choosing? Which one would be less torturous?
I think the colleagues would be less torturous. I think I'll have to go with that one.
Especially if it's those prescription pills.
Yeah, right. Oh goodness.
Wow, I don't know if that was better or worse than the underwear question.
Man, you were just killing me with these.
I promise I'm actually a professional. Like, I am an adult. This isn't a 13-year-old's podcast about educational technology. But those were some questions there.
This is some highfalutin something or other.
Right. Highfalutin is definitely that's actually the word most people use to describe my podcast. His podcast is very highfalutin.
That's right. Well, that's my Appalachia upbringing coming in, I guess, my Appalachian family roots.
Perfect. We're highfalutin together, Dave. Don't worry.
Sweet.
Okay, now let's highfalutin our way into some educational duct tape. And for any new listeners out there that haven't turned the podcast off yet,
hey, we're striving for mediocrity.
Right, and it is a strive. For any new listeners out there that are still with us, educational duct tape is my silly metaphor that educational technology is at its best when it's being used to meet a goal, address a learning standard, solve a problem, rather than just being used as the actual focus. It's being used as a tool, not the focus, which is an interesting question to ask, by the way. Most of the people that come on the show, they're either like tech coaches or classroom teachers or like education consultants, and they literally are working on viewing the technologies as a tool. But in a class like yours, Dave, like a STEM class, or if somebody teaches like a tech class, sometimes the tool is the focus, and that's actually okay. That's not a bad thing. Like, there's validity in kids learning computer science and virtual reality and things like that. It's okay for them to be the focus. But just because that's kind of the lens of the show, we'll attack it from the lens of the tools being tools, not the focus. Does that sound fair?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Because whenever you're teaching the technology, especially like 3D programming with Unity or whatever, I mean, you're teaching, you're teaching them students how to do algorithms. You're teaching them how to graph and look at the XYZ axis. Mm-hmm. You're teaching physics. You're attaching either rigid body physics or elastic physics. So there's a ton of things that you could be teaching just in all the technology.
Yeah, I think this is, there was a recent podcast episode where I talked about looking at educational technology from a perspective of focusing on the verb of what you're trying to accomplish rather than the noun of what you're using. And I think that, we were talking about the changes that have come to that STEM course in the 7 or 8 years since we first designed it. And I think that was one of the earliest changes is we kind of started off saying, we're going to teach the kids how to use this, this, and this, to we're going to teach the kids how to like achieve this, this, and this, and then we'll select the tools they're going to use for it.
Right. Yeah, that's a very good way to put it. Because we, whenever we were doing this, and even now, Becky and I, whenever we continue to do this and think up new projects, it's, hey, we want them to have this kind of an outcome. What kind of tool are we going to use to get there?
Right. And even when it is a tool that you're trying to get them to, you think of a framework to put it into where they're actually trying to accomplish something, and learning the tool is a product of doing that, or part of the process of doing that, if that makes sense.
Yep.
Like you never just frame it as just learning a tool, because what kid's going to want that, and what tool that you teach a 7th or 8th grader is really going to be around in 10 years when they come out of school.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you think about like how often phones change, different generations or new models come out,
Right.
definitely the stuff that they're using now in high school, they're not going to be using even in college or in their job.
Right. And so it's about teaching them how to use it to accomplish something, so that then they could pivot and use a different tool in those same ways. So let's actually dive into a question that kind of does that for us. So my question to you is, how can students create prototypes of designs to show comprehension of class content? So taking something they're learning about in some kind of relatively common classroom, and creating prototypes of designs. And we're going to focus on 3D printing here. Obviously, we could do it with cardboard and stuff like that too. But how could we create prototypes of designs that show classroom content?
Well, I think number one, it depends on the level of the student, like either age or even developmental. So going from the easiest with like Tinkercad, where you use pre-designed shapes, change those shapes around to create something more complex. Mm-hmm. So taking simple shapes like squares or cones, to create, say, an airplane or a boat, whatever. And then if you get up higher, because we use in our class, we use what professional engineers or mechanical engineers could use. We use Onshape, which is actually mentioned to me from Sarah Rivera. So thank you, Sarah.
Shout out to episode, I believe 3 guests. Sarah Rivera.
I was going to say 2, but I couldn't remember. So yeah, she told me about Onshape, which is really nice. It was started by the people at SolidWorks, and which SolidWorks is another one. But Onshape is free for education, and it's also cloud-based. So I've used my phone a bunch of times to show models of stuff that I do on the computer. They have an app, and I can show that with using my phone.
Cool.
Even Autodesk, they have a whole suite of software. You could use their 3D modeling one is called Inventor, but they also have easier ones like Fusion 360. Some go away, and then they add new products. So there's a bunch of different ones that you could use with that also.
So for each of those tools, so you named, I think 5 there: Onshape, Tinkercad, SolidWorks, Autodesk Inventor, and Autodesk Fusion 360. So for those 5 tools, before we talk about other ones, because I'm sure there are other ones we want to talk about, let's help people make a decision as to which one they would use. So first, going from Chromebook to Mac to PC to tablet, which are there different tools you use in different situations?
Yeah, there can be. I mean, with the ones that are web-based like Tinkercad and Onshape, it doesn't matter what you use. You could use a Chromebook for those. However, like SolidWorks, I'm not sure the Mac. I'm pretty sure they have a Mac, but I'm not sure. But definitely for PC. And SolidWorks is kind of expensive and pricey. They do give an educational discount depending on seat license, but you have to download the software to the computer.
Hey guys, just me cutting in here really quickly to let you know that we researched this after recording the episode, and SolidWorks is not available on Mac computers, so it is a PC-only solution. Of course, you could be using a Mac to run a PC software, but it's not natively available on Mac. Okay, back into the episode.
Autodesk is free, but you have to download it to your PC. So you can't use it on a Chromebook. Yeah, Autodesk Inventor.
That's Autodesk That's Inventor, yep.
Yeah, and the Fusion 360.
Okay, just jumping in once again to confirm this here. Autodesk Inventor only works on PCs as well. It does not work on Macs. It does not work on Chromebooks. But as Dave said, it is free for students and teachers, which is a huge deal because if you look it up, you'll see it's at a very high price, but it only works on PCs. He does mention Autodesk Fusion 360, which works across platforms because it is cloud-based. Okay, let's get back into the interview. I promise this is the last time I'll interrupt. Maybe.
But we've been using Onshape so that the students can, depending on, because they use it also in other classes. Mm-hmm. We've partnered with some of the science classes where the students will create 3D printed rockets, and they'll design them in Onshape, but they'll, instead of working here in the STEM room, they'll be in their science room or wherever they need to be, and they could be on their Chromebook or laptop. It doesn't matter because it's cloud-based.
Nice. And so Onshape, Tinkercad is free. Most people are aware of Tinkercad. Onshape is completely free as well, or is it a freemium?
No, it's free. It's free as well.
And then
it has a free EDU subscription. Yeah.
Okay. And then SolidWorks, you said, is a software. It works on PCs for sure, possibly on Macs, and it's paid. It has an educational price,
right?
And it's worth it. Yeah, I've seen it. If you're trying to do the kind of stuff that SolidWorks does, it's definitely worth it. It's one of those times where the pricing is appropriate. And then Autodesk Inventor, you said, is software as well, and it's free though.
Yeah, Autodesk makes all of their suite of software available for free for students and faculty.
Okay. Now let's talk age level. So like Tinkercad, I know my kiddos who are elementary school age could totally use Tinkercad. I think that would go down maybe to first, second grade, wouldn't you think?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yep.
Okay. And what about Onshape?
Onshape, seventh grade, because after they use Tinkercad, I would say middle school, like seventh grade, seventh and eighth grade. Our students have been really successful with it. It is a little bit of a learning curve because now you're bringing in sketching and different terminologies that they're not used to. Plus, like dimensions using metrics or inches, depending on what you want to do. And if you're going to use this for 3D printing, you kind of want to stay with metrics anyway, because that's what your printer usually measures in also.
Okay. And what about SolidWorks?
Our students have used that, and it's worked out really well. It does tend to be a little bit confusing, a little bit more confusing than Onshape, just because of the age, I guess. But so we've gone away from SolidWorks and actually just went to Onshape. Yeah.
Now, I can remember when you made that decision, and if I'm remembering correctly, it was primarily because in a 9-week, quarter of a school year long class, there just wasn't enough time for the kids to master SolidWorks. Would you say that's accurate?
Oh yeah, definitely. Even to make a simple part. So yeah, it just didn't lend itself to. If we had a semester class, it would be okay. But with a 9-week course, it was too intensive.
Yeah. So in your ideal situation, would you introduce that kind of work to the kids through something like Onshape, and then if they took to it, then level them up to SolidWorks? Is that kind of the way you do it?
Yeah, but it's not really a leveling up. It's just more across. It's the same thing. It's just, I think, number one, Onshape has a really good tutorial and learning center and really good videos and exercises to do to teach you Onshape. So you're able to do in about 4 weeks, like their first 3 like fundamentals. They call them fundamentals of CAD, and you're able to do the first 3 levels, which can get you to making parts that you can print out.
And so you said 4 weeks of like a 45-minute classroom.
Yeah, and this is 7th graders doing it. So there's quite a few exercises and video clips.
And what about Autodesk Inventor?
We did try that. The students did tend to get confused with it. I would say I would leave that more to high school, although it can be done in eighth grade, some in 7th. I would say I would feel more comfortable with 8th grade and 9th grade with it.
Kind of similar to SolidWorks.
Yeah, very similar to SolidWorks. But the tools they're all similar. It's just that the tools are in a different place, and you have to figure out where they go.
Right. Okay. So are there any? So I know I want to mention my favorite, which was the first one we started with. It continues to be relevant, but it wouldn't be used in some of those situations, and that's SketchUp. So SketchUp was originally made by a company called Trimble, and then was bought by Google, as Google thought they were going to be using it a lot with Google Earth. I think was their idea. They were going to model 3D buildings for Google Earth, and then something progressed in their technology that they didn't really need it anymore. So then they no longer owned SketchUp, and SketchUp stayed around, but was then owned by Trimble. SketchUp, in that time when we were using it for the STEM course, whatever it was, 8 years ago, was free but software based, and there was a paid version as well. So, but for schools, it was free. It was a piece of software, so we were using it on PCs, and it would have worked on Macs as well. But about a year or two ago, it became web based too. And works on Chromebooks. Now there's paid and free versions as well, but for schools, there's a SketchUp for Schools level program that works with school Google accounts. So as long as you have Google accounts, you can get the SketchUp for Schools. If for some reason you don't have Google accounts or something like that, there is a free version that schools could potentially use too. but I think SketchUp's probably appropriate. Probably sixth grade up, would you say?
Yeah, I mean, although my wife's fourth grade class, they have done they've done modeling in SketchUp and then sent them to me for printing. So
Oh, nice.
yeah, so I mean, we've had elementary students do it also. Maybe down to fourth grade, maybe third grade, but that might be stretching it.
Yeah. Okay. So we'd say like it's like an intermediate level kind of up,
Yeah.
and it's web based.
Yeah, definitely. The only problem with SketchUp is really nice, especially for designing buildings. The problem is whenever you try to print with it, the printing can get a little bit wonky.
Yeah, and that's one thing I want to make sure we pointed out is SketchUp is not great. If your goal is 3D printing, SketchUp is not great. If you have other goals that make SketchUp the appropriate tool, you can 3D print the things, but it doesn't lend itself as a fantastic 3D print tool. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. That or you have to do some we call them shenanigans, where you gotta put it from SketchUp into like a mesh mixer or even Tinkercad to try to correct the model so that you can actually
So I know when Tinkercad I don't think existed when we started the program, so we used SketchUp. There wasn't really a good tool that was available for kids for free, at least that we were aware of at that time, that kind of let the kids build like machine parts, kind of mechanical engineering kind of tasks. There was just SketchUp. And so when Tinkercad came in, we were excited to have something that kind of was better for like a mechanical engineering kind of thing. But I hated Tinkercad when I started using it. I still don't love it. And I think what I dislike about it, it's not actually whether or not it's a good tool, because I mean it's a good tool, and kids often really take to it and can make really cool things with it. It just like it doesn't match up with the way my brain works, I think, if that makes sense.
Yeah, me too. I cannot stand using it.
But so I have at the middle school that I work at, the kids are experienced with Tinkercad, and we introduced SketchUp to them this year, and a lot of the kids are like, I hate this SketchUp thing. I miss Tinkercad. It's just SketchUp is more dimension based. I don't know. It's kind of a true to the way a normal, civil engineer or whatever would work, throughout the last 3 decades since they were using AutoCAD back in the day. It's just an extension of those kinds of things in kind of a 3D world. Whereas Tinkercad is just different. It's almost like the other side of your brain to me.
Yeah, definitely. You use simple shapes to make more complex shapes, and you just really have to break that down. Whereas for me, I would rather just sketch it out, extrude the part, put in the curves and everything that you need to put in. But some kids just love it, and they can do crazy things with it. So, but I just really like Onshape or whatever. But yeah, SketchUp is nice.
And so I think we left off before we dive more into kind of differentiating between the tools. I think we left one off. That was Fusion 360, right? Also from Autodesk.
Yeah, that's a simpler version, I think, of Inventor. Although we didn't really use it very much. It was It was kind of a hybrid web-based / you have to download it. So it was kind of weird in how it worked, and the students really didn't like it, not at all. But they do kind of like Inventor. They thought that was a good mix after using Onshape. But we've just really stuck with Onshape because that's worked really well for us.
And what age range would you say for Fusion 360?
Fusion 360 could be middle school to high school, I think.
And it's free? Yeah,
free. Yep. You just have to log in with your school address, and then anything in the Autodesk suite, all of it, even their gaming stuff like Maya, or they have a 3DS or 3D Max where you can program in 3 dimensions. Those are also free.
Oh, cool. And Tinkercad's also Autodesk, right?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So once you have a Tinkercad account, you do have an Autodesk account.
Cool. Yeah, I've noticed that when I've had to log into it. So we've gone over. If you're looking for free, you pretty much use any tool that we've named except for SolidWorks, pretty much. If you're looking for web-based, you would look at Tinkercad or Onshape or SketchUp.
Right.
If you're looking for younger kids, you would look at Tinkercad. Maybe SketchUp.
Maybe, yeah. Like
depending on how young, maybe on like third grade,
third or fourth, maybe.
Yeah.
Also depends on the kid too. Depends on like if they're a spatial thinker.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. I'm glad you pointed that out, because when I should take that into account when I'm saying things like that. When I say middle school and up or elementary and up, you as the teacher, not you, Dave, but you listener, kind of you know your students, and you know in terms of the kinds of skills you need, you know what kind of thinker they are in regards to that. Like my son, who's a fourth grader, like when you say SketchUp is maybe fourth grade and up, like I think like for him, he could definitely do SketchUp. Like I just think
right.
that he's a good spatial thinker, and he's pretty good with math. I think he could definitely do it. But if he struggled at those things, I would go, okay, yeah, he's a fourth grader, but he's not a SketchUp ready fourth grader. Maybe he needs to continue in Tinkercad, and my youngest, who's a kindergartner, like even though I think Tinkercad's probably more like first or second grade up, like I think as a kindergartner he might be ready for it, because he also is a good spatial thinker. He builds the heck out of some Legos. Like I think he could maybe handle it. But that's a good point, that it really depends on the kid. And when you say something like SolidWorks is probably high school, or when you say Inventor is more high school, like we certainly have middle schoolers who could handle that. If you have middle schoolers who can handle geometry in middle school, they could certainly handle these programs in middle school as well.
Yep.
Okay, so we know based on platform, we know based on price, we know based on age. Now let's talk about the kind of stuff you would do on each of them. So the original question was, how can students create prototypes of designs to show comprehension of class content? So could you take us through, like, if I'm a teacher of subject area X and we're learning about like standard Y, like what kind of tools would I use for it? Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah. So depending on the class, even in English and language arts, you could use, say, SketchUp, because they have pre-made models. So like if I was teaching, say, Shakespeare, I could go into SketchUp, go into the 3D model warehouse, and I could download into my project a model of the Globe Theater. And then I could go in, since in SketchUp everything is made to scale, which there's a good math function for you. Since everything is made to scale, I can go in and say, hey, why does the king sit over here in the box? Or how close are the actors to the crowd? And you can literally measure that. You could also just take a look and see how big it was. So there's a lot of different ideas that you can do, and that's just for language arts. Social studies, you could I had one teacher that one of her students, they were doing medieval castles, and they built a castle in SketchUp to scale. So they took like one of the famous castles in England and then designed it in SketchUp.
Yeah, very cool.
And then if you're doing like math or any kind of, like you're teaching measurement, definitely using like Onshape, where you have to make a sketch and dimension it. You could either use inches, you could use millimeters. But the cool thing is, once you make the part, you can also switch between, say, kilograms and pounds and find out what the mass is for that object after you've attached, say, steel or aluminum or some kind of alloy to it. So you can look at Did you say that was Onshape? Yeah, Onshape will let you, and SolidWorks and Inventor will also allow you to attach different types of materials to it. So you could model it and then say, oh, we're going to grind this out in stone. And you can attach different types of materials to it, which is kind of nice, because then you could do like a systems analysis, or not a systems analysis, but an analysis of the product. What's a specific gravity, center of gravity, which is kind of nice too whenever you get into, say, building rockets, because you have to, if you want your rocket to fly correctly, depending on what you make it out of, you got to know the center of mass. And
that's really, like, when we talk about prototyping, like that's really the kind of stuff that's why you prototype, right? Because you can't tell those things about your rocket or whatever it is you're building until you actually model it and find out the distribution of the mass, the volume, the density. Like, what if it's made out of this material? What if it's made out of this material? What if it's hollow? Like, you need a prototype to be able to do those things. So you could do that digitally first, and it'll give you those measurements, but then you could also potentially 3D print it and then get to actually see it, right?
Yeah, and the nicer thing with some of the more intensive programs like SolidWorks or Inventor, with their suite of software for Autodesk, you can also take your model and put it into a simulation. So you can take your model of, say, a rocket that you built in SolidWorks, put it into a flow simulator, and you can see what the aerodynamics would be for that vehicle, and test fly it digitally.
Oh, so you're not even talking about 3D printing them. You're talking about taking that file into a different computer program.
Yeah, right. Yep, definitely. Yep.
Wow, that's interesting. Yeah,
Yeah, that's
and
pretty cool.
Like again, that's what an engineer does. Like those are the kinds of skills that these students are going to need if they're going to go into those roles and be true problem solvers, and
Yeah.
true creators.
Yep, and they will definitely, and it's like it's a lot like if you ever watched a video of what they do with NASA wind tunnels. Like they'll see how the air flows over it, but then with the high speeds that they get to, what's the temperature look like with friction?
Mhm.
Where's the hot spots? What do they have to do here? What do they have to do there?
Mm-hmm. So if I'm a teacher and I'm teaching something that's historical or geographical, and I'm mainly thinking about kind of like architecture things, we're pretty much saying SketchUp is the tool you're going to look at for that.
Correct.
Aside from other tools, like I should say, because somebody's going to message us, like you should use Minecraft for that or something like that, or you should use CoSpaces for that. And that's valid too, right? That's just a different.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah. Those aren't the kinds of tools we're talking about here, but
Right.
those are also valid tools to consider for that.
Yeah.
But then if you're trying to create something like you were talking about, like a rocket or something like that, like you could really use pretty much any of the other ones we've named: Tinkercad, Onshape, SolidWorks, Inventor,
Yeah.
Fusion 360. Like those decisions are going to be based off of the technology available, the students you have, the age of the students you have, the budget you have, things like that. Do you agree with that?
Correct. Yep. And then also like the level of detail of your project. So if I'm going to make a more
Right.
complex model, obviously I'm going to want to stick to, say, Onshape or SolidWorks or Inventor.
Yeah, you're not going to use Tinkercad for something like that.
Correct.
Right. Tinkercad is more like, I don't know, like if I want to prototype a product that I'm looking to, I don't know, like sell, like if I want to prototype a keychain, or if I want to prototype a cell phone case, or if I want something where we're not looking at first for that level of precision, we're more trying to get a feel for the appearance of an object than the function of the object. If that makes sense.
Like if I'm making a steering wheel, I want to use Onshape or SolidWorks. If I'm making an art pass, I'm using Tinkercad.
Right, an art pass. I like that. I like that analogy.
Yeah.
What kinds of, you mentioned the Globe Theater, you mentioned a medieval castle, you mentioned I think a rocket. Like what other kinds of like classroom connected concepts have you seen the kids work on through any of these programs?
We've used it for art, where the kids are designing like sculptures and whatnot. They'll design a sculpture. You could go in with geology and printing up different crystal structures.
Fascinating. So again, Dave and I have another question to talk about, but some of you are probably like asking questions to your podcast right now, to like your podcast player, to your phone or something right now, and hoping Dave would answer to confirm the things you want to do in your classroom. So his contact info is going to be in the show notes. So if you're like, hey, I want to do this project and we have X tool and Y age students and whatever, and I'm in this content area, like what should I do? Like, I think we've hit it pretty well, but you could always reach out to Dave and ask him those questions about things like that. And hopefully he will respond to you.
I hope so. I will.
Right. He will. Okay. So let's pivot from that and go to another one of your passions in your STEM classroom. I'll let you ask this question, then we'll go from there on it.
All right. So how can students represent content related locations?
Okay, so the way I'm going to answer this is going to be much lower tech than the way you're going to answer this, and that doesn't make my answer bad or your answer bad or my answer worse or your answer worse. It goes back to what we always talk about on the show, which is you choose the tool based on what you're trying to achieve, right? Yep. We don't have to use the most technical thing if we're not trying to achieve the most technical process. So what I'm going to say here, if I'm trying to represent a content related location, so we're thinking here that 360 would be best, right? Is what we're is the kind of lens that we're coming from on this.
Correct.
So I'm going to share a link to a tweet in here that I originally saw shared by Amanda Sandoval. And Amanda, I hope I'm saying your last name right there. I'm sure I'm saying Amanda right. I'm not sure if I'm saying Sandoval right or not. But she, back in August, shared how she made a 360 image of her classroom and then shared it out with students before they came to class so they could actually see her room and see what it looked like and be able to share it with her with their parents and look through the room. And what she did was she used the Google Street View app. And what you do in the Google Street View app is you pretty much stand in the center of the area. You start by kind of taking a picture of one wall, and then it'll kind of show you the areas that you still need to get to finish your 360. And so you pivot, 45 degrees to your right or whatever the distance might be, take another picture, pivot 45 degrees again, and go all the way around the room until you've made a full 360. And then you can also do part of the ceiling and the floor so that it completely fills the cell phone view. And then what she did was upload that to Google Tour Creator, and she was actually able to label in certain areas of the room, like this is where you get your Chromebook from, this is where you turn in your work, this is where you sit to read silently. Like, she was actually able to label the locations in her room in this tour and give kids a real feel for the room. So you could totally do that in other situations. So she used Google Street View app to make the 360, which she could have made it other places, but it was a really easy way to do it. And then she used Google Tour Creator to link in information about the things in the tour so the kids could then look at that on their phone and actually learn about different locations. So that's a relatively low tech, not a low tech, but maybe a low hurdle for trying it out kind of tool. What are some other ways that you might do it, Dave?
So we've used 360 cameras where we have the actual camera. We take video of it. My students they learn how to use a game engine called Unity. You can use different ones. There's some that are online. If you just do like a search for online game engines, there's those that you could use. But you make a sphere, put the camera inside the sphere in Unity, and then you paint, I guess is the way they term it. You paint the walls of the sphere with your video, and you're able to watch the video that way. And you can create a standalone app where you could put that Unity project up and the kids could download it, use it with Google Cardboard, but it becomes its own standalone app that you could use. An easier way, you could take the 360 video and put it up to YouTube, and then you can switch to Cardboard view if you have a viewer there that way. That would probably be an easier way for most classrooms to do 360 video.
So either way, you're starting off with the 360 camera. You're just talking about where you're going to go to with that.
Right. Yeah. Yep. So yeah, we have different types of cameras. We have the Ryko Theta. We also have it's called a Vuse, VUZE camera that you're able to take 360 footage with.
Now I know the Ryko Theta, and I know that it's probably, like, I'm just going to ballpark the price. I think it's around $300 or $400.
That's $260, $250.
A little bit lower now. Good.
Yeah, it's lower now.
Yeah, which I think is a reasonable price if you're going to, like, as a school or as a class, use it extensively. Like that's a cost that I think has value if you are assigning that value to it. Like, there was a quote I heard from Simon Sinek, who's a pretty famous guy out there that people quote a lot. He said the value is not determined by those who set the price. The value is determined by those who choose to pay. So if you're listening and you're like, yeah, $250 for a Ryko Theta camera, like, that's an appropriate price if that's the appropriate value for you, right? It just depends on what you're trying to achieve with it. What about the Vuse camera? Is that the same ballpark?
No, Vuse camera is high definition 4K. They even have a 5.7K model, and it records spatial sound. So you get definitely a better upgrade. The other thing too, with the newest Vuse camera, you can take 180 3D pictures. So that is really cool to do. Whenever I was in Hawaii, I took my camera, took some 3D images and video of the crater, and put that in the Oculus Quest, put that video in the Oculus Quest. And it's really cool to see. It's like you're there. Pretty nifty. So those.
Tell us more about that, the sound that you were saying you get with the Vuse.
So spatial sound is whenever, like if someone walks around, you'll hear it in one ear, and it transfers to, literally sounds like the person is behind you, and then over to your other ear. Which if you're listening to, or if you're playing like a scary zombie game, kind of freaks you out. So.
Yeah, for sure. So with the Ryko Theta picks up sound if you're taking a video, but it just sounds, I don't know how to determine it. It's not spatial.
Yeah.
It's just there.
No, it's pretty much just all around you anyway.
Right.
So
right.
Like you won't hear the bird that chirped on your left, and you'll just hear it all around you. You can't tell where the bird is at.
Right. Whereas in real, so that's a little less, like when we're talking VR here, it's a little less virtual reality right there, right? Whereas in real life, we would know where that bird sound was coming from. In a Ryko Theta 360 video, you wouldn't know. And a Vuse camera video, you would know. Not if you upload it to YouTube, though, right? Because it wouldn't. No, that would transfer over.
Yeah, it depends on how you upload it, but yeah, it It could do spatial sound a little bit. It'd be kind of hard. You'd have to really have a good system to pick it up.
Okay. So you would record it with one of those two different cameras, and then the easy route is to then upload it to YouTube, and people could either watch it. You could watch it on your computer screen and just kind of like drag yourself around the video, or open it up in Cardboard, even without the headset, right? You can just open up in the Cardboard app.
Right.
And
right.
There's just actually, isn't there just like a picture of a Google Cardboard?
It's like the Google Cardboard icon, and then you can use that. Just tap it; it'll split the screen. It looks like the old. I'm probably dating myself, but the old ViewMaster view,
right?
And then you'll be able to see it in like a 360 view.
Nice. And then if you want to go more complex, you said you would go to Unity from there. So tell us a little more about what Unity is.
Yeah, Unity is a game engine. It's a 3D programmer. You start with a 3D project. And then you put in it's a sphere. You just put in the sphere object. If you've ever played video games, like if you're playing Assassin's Creed or something like that, you have a couple different camera views. So like Assassin's Creed is like a third-person view where you're up and away from the character. If you're in a first-person shooter game or a first-person game, you're looking at like hands, like you're the person that's doing it. Mm-hmm. So you can move that view around in Unity. So you take that camera and put it inside the sphere. And then you paint, for lack of a better word, you paint the cube to add color to it. But instead of adding color, you add your video to it. So the video is literally all around you.
Yeah, nice. So I work a lot with students with using Scratch, and Scratch is great for designing games, but they are very two-dimensional. Like you can go left, right, up, or down, and even to go off the screen, that takes some pretty that takes kind of like some hacks to make that happen.
Right.
Whereas with Unity, you could achieve the same kinds of things, except there's now a behind you and above you and below you, so you can go all around, and those things exist until you turn to them, essentially, right?
Right. Yep. And you, it's literally around you.
Yeah. Well, and what kind of devices do you do Unity on?
You have to use a PC. They do have Unity for Mac that you can use. And then to view it, if you want to view it in 360, you would have to you can configure it to either download onto your phone as an Android, or if you leave it on your computer, you can also, if you have like an Oculus Rift or the Rift S or an HTC Vive, you could configure your project to be viewed there also.
So Unity you can only do on some kind of software-based device. I know for students on Chromebooks, like there are some tutorials you can access that are web-based, but to actually do your own programming in Unity, you would need to have a PC or a Mac with that software on it. Is it free software or is it paid software?
No, they have a free personal software. They also have a free education software, which is pretty much the pro license version. And you'll probably have to talk to your tech department to get it all configured to work that way, but you'll have all the features that the pro has also.
Okay. And then there's possibly some things that maybe your tech department might have to whitelist and things like that might normally be filtered out. Did you have to have access to, or is it that just getting the software loaded?
Well, it's getting the software loaded and like how it starts up.
Okay. And what age levels would you say that's for?
Unity, even though it's a professional grade game engine, Unity, my 7th graders are programming in on it. I have students even today, they're putting their Unity project on the Rift so that they could see it in virtual reality.
How cool is that?
So I would say 7th grade all the way up to high school and beyond.
Now, if I'm a kid in your class and I'm a 7th grader and I'm in the class for 9 or 10 weeks, let's say I want to learn about Unity and program something. How much of the course time is that going to take me? And then what other things can I fit in? Like just give me kind of the bird's eye view of what a kid could accomplish in that setting.
Well, for my class, the kid will start programming pretty much from day one. You learn how to use Unity by using Unity. So they start with some guided tutorials that are pretty simplistic. They show the students how to download assets from the asset store. So they're not creating every character. They're putting it in, and then they're changing the settings around, adding scripts, adding this code or that code and this setting and that physics to make the game work. So they start learning how to program pretty much from day one.
Wow. And then how long would it take them to get competent in it?
They get competent pretty much by week 4. We have about 3 weeks and a couple of days left. And I've already got students that are designing their own project. They're already playing their game, testing it out, having other kids play their game, test it out. and putting it into virtual reality. So
what an awesome experience for them to actually like go through that, whether you want to call it the design thinking process or the engineering design process. They're going through from learning the tool to drafting what they want to create, to prototyping what they want to create, to having people try it out and observing their reactions and getting their feedback and tweaking it. Like what a real world skill that we need kids to have coming out in our current society and economy.
Yeah, it's phenomenal what the kids can accomplish because they get professional grade, stuff, and they can start doing it as 7th graders. So we've had some students that they just love using Unity and another program called Blender, which is like a 3D animator. And this one kid, he just loved Blender and started making all of his own stuff, would put it into Unity as characters. And he started selling those characters to other people for their YouTube channels. So it actually became like a revenue stream for him.
Oh my gosh, that's so cool. And that's Blender that he was creating those in, or was he creating them in Unity?
No, he was creating them in Blender. And then Blender is a 3D animator.
Okay. How cool. Cool. Now, so just really briefly, like what are the different headsets that you would use with this kind of stuff?
You would use an Oculus Rift or the Rift S, which is the new version. We also have a standalone version, which is called the Oculus Quest. And that's its own computer and everything in the headset. So you don't have to have a gaming PC to run it.
So if I have an Oculus Rift or Rift S, I do need the PC to be able to run those things. But if I have the Quest, I do not, right?
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
And there are ways that you can put your own apps onto the Oculus Quest. But again, it takes a little bit of shenanigans and and some research. But yeah, you can do it. And it's actually quite easy.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And then we also have the HTC Vive, which is a lot more for art and design.
Oh, okay.
As well as games, but it really has a nice productivity with art and design. And engineering.
So it kind of depends on what kind of perspective you're coming from, which one you go for.
Exactly, yeah. Oculus has always been associated with gaming.
Mm-hmm.
They do have some really good software programs to create, but the Vive really is more like productivity, definitely gaming, but really a good emphasis on like creation.
Very cool. Very cool. So most of the listeners probably have had some kind of experience with maybe Google Cardboard or Google Expeditions, which use the headset to let you essentially look around a 360 image and maybe see some information attached to the things like I was talking about in Amanda's example earlier. But the major difference with these things is with these, you could actually interact with the things. They could have movement. The interaction is really the big thing, right?
Right. Yeah. These you're using controllers and you're actually designing and doing work, playing games, clicking on objects. And you could create 3D models in the Rift or the Vive, and you could print those models out. Or you could design a 3D space. Mm-hmm. Becky has designed a graphic design course project in her class using the Rift and Vive. So there's lots of potential with that.
Wow. So that would work in either of them, but you said the Vive kind of lends itself a little more to it?
Yeah, the Vive kind of lends itself, but the students like the controllers more with the Oculus.
Okay.
The Rift.
No. What is that? Is it Tilt Brush? Is that the one that you use from within one of the headsets?
Yeah, Tilt Brush works with both. Okay. And Tilt Brush is a really cool art program, and you can design like 3D art, 3D paintings. We had a teacher, this is funny, we had a teacher that came in and wanted to try Tilt Brush because she'd seen a video on it. Mm-hmm. And she loaded in the sketch with the Stranger Things monster.
Okay.
So not the Demogorgon, but the big one.
Okay.
And you can teleport around the painting, right? So she accidentally teleported herself right on the shoulder of the monster, and she was freaked out to begin with. And when she did that, she really got freaked out. It was pretty fun.
She was taking a ride on the Mind Flayer, right?
Yeah, the Mind Flayer was looking at her.
That's creepy.
Looking into her soul.
Yeah, no spoilers. I have 2 episodes left. Okay.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
So Tilt Brush, I remember Jimmy Fallon doing a sketch where was it him drawing with it? I'm gonna have to find it and link it in the show notes. But for people that are curious about Tilt Brush, I think it was him using it. And they were playing like Pictionary maybe with it. Have you seen that?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I've not seen that one. There's one with Glenn Keane. He's a Disney animator,
Okay.
and he designed Ariel and a bunch of other characters. And he's on James Corbin, the Late Late Show, I think it's called. And if you just Google Glenn Keane, Late Late Show or whatever, you'll find where he draws Ariel.
Okay.
And it's a really cool video to see.
Cool. So, Dave, I think now that we've talked about all this stuff, people's heads are probably spinning. And so, like, again, spinning in a good way with like ideas and all the different tools that they now know about. So again, Dave's contact information is in the show notes. I'm excited to hear, like the duct tapers out there have exciting ways of applying ideas to their classrooms and to their schools to help students. So I'm excited to hear the adjacent possible of people hearing about all these different things you're sharing and saying like, oh, wow, we could use it in our classroom or our school to do this. And so I'm excited to hear what people share about that kind of stuff.
Yeah, just as an example, like the adjacent possible. So with our VR and the different programs, our special ed class with the disabilities, he has a kid who he thinks virtual reality would work really well, but he can't use his hands. But using virtual reality in some of the programs, when you look at it and you keep the icon or your mouse on the object, the program will start up, and it's like a movie almost, but it's all around you. It's just the possibilities that you could use this virtual reality for in a classroom are just tremendous.
Yeah, and that kind of goes back to something that I talk about pretty regularly, which is like the best thing you could do is be aware of the tools, and then when you see these students or these situations that need some kind of differentiation, you could use what you're aware of to find something that fits into there. And talking about the adjacent possible, this particular teacher that deals with these students that have these special needs was able to come to you and say, hey, I know you know about this kind of stuff. This is this student's needs. What could we potentially do here? And then you were able to kind of put that together to be able to provide that student with what they needed.
Exactly. Yeah. Like we have the art teacher come to me and Becky a lot, and they say, hey, this student is so good in art. They really think three-dimensionally, which is hard to see in 7th grade and 8th grade. And could we try having a student, create art three-dimensionally with Tilt Brush or with Gravity Sketch or with, a bunch of other programs that we have, Quill and Medium, where they're sketching in 3 dimensions.
Wow. How cool. You're doing some awesome stuff, Dave.
Oh, thanks.
Really cool to hear about. I think people are going to be like geeking out about some of the stuff you shared here, and they're going to be your email is going to be flooding with people like asking you questions about stuff. Please reach out to Dave and pester him about this stuff because he's got. Yeah, I'm picking on you, Dave. But he's got a lot. He's got a lot of insights, and people are really going to get a lot out of this. So I really appreciate you being on the show.
Yeah, and if any teacher is in the area and you want to come out and check us out, we've had teachers in before where they come in. Come into our classroom and just kind of watch what the students are doing. They even try out some of the stuff. We didn't even mention HoloLens. So that's augmented reality. But yeah, it's really cool too.
So all of these, so that's good because people go like, what's VR, what's AR? So the things we were talking about were all VR, virtual reality, which means you set yourself into a setting. Augmented reality is what HoloLens is, which keeps you in your setting and adds things into it, right?
Yeah, HoloLens is Microsoft, and that's when you have your digital content overlaid on your real world.
I remember coming in and visiting you when you got the HoloLens and playing the game where there were like
the robots
coming through the walls, and I had to zap them all.
Yeah, he was, and I think I posted it on Twitter. If you look at my feed, you'll have to go way back. But yeah, there's Jake blasting robots and moving around the room.
I'll have to try to track that one down and put that in the show notes. All right, Dave, thanks so much for being with us today.
Yeah, no problem. It was great seeing you or listening to you.
We didn't see each other. We just talked to each other.
No, it's almost like with all the digs.
What a good time having Dave in today. I hope you guys enjoyed that. I know it went really, really, really long, but if you think about it, he shared and we shared about like 20 different tools in there. It was a lot of content, and I just didn't want to split it up between 2 episodes. I know the duct tapers. I know you guys are excited to hear this stuff, and I want to get to you this information as soon as I could. So here it is. I hope it's okay. And you're still here at an hour and 13 minutes in, and I appreciate that. I really, really, really appreciate that. And now it's time to hear from some of you duct tapers. First up, our Apple Podcast review of the week comes from Cindy Moorman or Moorman. And it was titled Great Educational Podcast, smiley face. I always like a smiley face in there. And she said, I've really enjoyed learning new things and remembering things I'd learned at tech conferences, wanted to try, but didn't yet through this podcast. I like the format and the guests have been informative. I appreciate Jake's expertise and willingness to share his time and ideas as well. Cindy, thank you so much for that. I really appreciate it. It always feels good to get these reviews, but more importantly, it does help other people discover the show. And when they find the show, it helps them say like, oh, look at these reviews that say that they enjoy it. I should probably check it out. And then we bring in more educators and we impact more students, which is really the goal of Educational Duct Tape. So these reviews are very helpful. Let's now hop over to the Educational Duct Tape Flipgrid and see what our friend Dana has to share.
Hey Duct Tapers, this is Dana Clement from North Texas, and I want to talk to you real quickly about GimKit. If you're not using GimKit, you are missing out. So GimKit is a web-based review game that you can use directly with Quizlet or other flashcards that you have created to help your students memorize whatever information you are currently learning at the time in your class. So what I like to do is upload my Quizlet sets that are vocabulary based and allow my students to play GimKit, which will provide kind of like Kahoot, a question and then 4 answer choices. The more questions that you get correct, the more money you acquire, and then you can purchase power-ups to help better your score and increase your standing on the leaderboard. Or you can purchase things that will then maybe hinder another student in the class, like the ability to ice their screen so that it is frozen for 15 seconds, or subtract the amount they're earning per question so that they're actually earning less money than you. My students' scores have increased tremendously since using GimKit to review for state tests. You get an awesome report at the end where you can see the overall class average, and then you can individually see each student's average and which questions they're getting right so that you know what you have to remediate on. GimKit's awesome. It was designed by 2 high school seniors. And if that's how students want to study, we need to get on the bandwagon. So gimkit.com, check it out.
Thank you for that, Dana. And the rest of you, remember, as a duct taper, you could head on over to that Educational Duct Tape Flipgrid either by going to eduducttape.com and clicking on the Flipgrid link, or going to flipgrid.com/eduducttape. And you could reflect on something we shared in the show, or share something totally different that you want everybody else to hear about. As Dana was talking about there, yes, you can take things that you've created in Quizlet and bump them over to GimKit if you've never tried doing that in GimKit. There was actually a little bit of drama between those two companies a couple weeks ago as they were trying to figure out whether Quizlet sets of terms could be brought into GimKit or not. And the result is that you can still do it. So you could do exactly what Dana's talking about there. And as she said, kids really do love using GimKit. It doesn't have to be the tool you use, but it is a tool that kids have a lot of fun with, and it does have good review results. Let's now hop over to Twitter and talk about some hashtag #EduDuctTape there. A couple of my favorite tweets from the week. First one comes up from our friend Brian Carpenter at Brian, Bryon, Carr, with his hashtag Fresh Air at 5. And Brian does one of these almost every day where he's sharing what he's listening to on his morning walk. He said, walked 5.2 kilometers under clear black skies, enjoyed the dramatic pause as John Carippo at EDU Protocols started the awesome episode 29 with JakeMillerTech on hashtag #EduDuctTape. Brilliant content I will use as I teach this week. Fast and the Curious Formative Assessment at Balance LAP. Now, Brian, I love this point of the dramatic pause. John definitely caught me when he did that dramatic pause as I was introducing him during the show. Had he held it out another second or two longer, I would have really, really been concerned, and you would have heard me panicking on the air. But he held it just that right amount of time before the panic actually set in. Next up, at Miss Brandy New. This was a response in the Twitter chat last week when I asked the question that I asked of John, which was, which of the following would be less torturous, eating meat-flavored candy or kale-flavored ice cream? Brandy wants to know, I need to know if meat-flavored ice cream is an option. If not, I think I'm going to invent it. Brandy, I'll try it. I'm not sure if it's going to be good or not, but I will try it. If you invent meat-flavored ice cream, I'm down for a sample. Next up, also from that Twitter chat, our friend Angela Green said, less torturous would be kale-flavored ice cream, ... drowned in chocolate fudge topping. I think that's probably the only way I would eat kale-flavored ice cream, Angela, is if I get to cover it in something like chocolate fudge. I think that's probably a good plan there. Next tweet comes from at 33 Hoipel. I believe it is, Vicky. It's been since last year since you reminded me of how to say your name, so you might have to remind me again. And she was referring to last week's episode as well. I said, was anybody else loving all the nachos references? Love the open nacho gaji. LOL. And she said, I want to try this paragraph writing remix. I do agree that the open, what would John actually call it? Nacho paragraph. Nacho paragraph is a great idea. And I think, Vicky, if you tried it out, I'd love to hear how it goes. But yeah, I was definitely cracking up at John's history of nachos that he gave in the episode 2 weeks ago. Lots of fun last week with John. I need to stop saying last week because it was 2 weeks ago. Last fortnight. It was a fortnight ago that I had that interview with John on the air. So last fortnight with John, we had lots of fun. And finally, our new hashtag EDU duct tape tweeters of the last fortnight are at America Terraza 2, at Anna F. It's so hard to pronounce these things. Anna Fimirov, at Baker Dana 2424, at CM Watson 2010, at D Lanier, at Donahue Kathy, at James Varlack, at Jen Mitchell EDU, at Kathleen Corley, at Kilgore Tech, at Mandy Tolan EDU, at Megan Naglick, at Minnow D Fly, at Mrs. Booze, at Mrs. Mapes S, at NZ Lawn Bowler, at Planet K Ed, at Polo Nerd, at Rebecca Stiggy, at Roger D. Colby, at Rory Aileen, at Sattler Cyber, at Teach Better Team, at Teach Mom Repeat, at Tech Coach Juarez, and at TX Tech Chick. And by the way, with these new hashtag EDU duct tape tweeters, we are now over 450 different people who have tweeted with the hashtag EDU duct tape hashtag, and we're well over 450. So much so that next week or next fortnight, I keep saying week, next fortnight when I talk to you again, I may be saying we've broken 500. How awesome would that be? So go tell your friends to tune in, participate in the chat, and tweet about it. All right, that does it for this fortnight's episode of Educational Duct Tape. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for sticking with me through an hour and 20 minutes. You are awesome for doing that. Thank you for all of the awesome things you do for your students and the learners in your schools and across the world as we connect and try to help each other out in our classrooms doing awesome things for students. I appreciate you all. Thank you all so much. Have a great fortnight. I'll see you in 2 weeks.
Thank you for listening to the Educational Duct Tape Podcast. Please visit eduducttape.com to join the discussion, share possible topics, inquire about being a guest, or contact Jake. And remember, duct is spelled with a T, not a quack quack K.
It's another tangent in our conversation.
Right. Okay, I think the lie, and I'm actually cheating a little bit here. I think the lie is that you are not scared of heights. Despite the fact that you rock climb, I think that you are scared of heights, David.
You are correct, Jacob. Yeah.
Workout, good practice, right?
Oh, yeah. I have trouble holding on to my water afterwards. You know?
I bet. So the sore knuckles.
Yeah, hauling my 230-pound butt up a wall is... I need to lose some pounds.
Now, is 230 pounds the weight of just your butt, or that's you?
It's debatable. I don't know. We'll see.
You've got to be comfortable with a podcast guest to be able to ask them that question. Like, I couldn't have asked anybody else.
No, yeah. In fact, I thought for sure that this 2 truths and a lie, I was going to have to do a Kobayashi Maru just to try to rig it so I would win.
Nice.